Hey, what is up everyone? So with the recent change to insiders now with the NDA being lifted, one thing that we can do now is I can show you all the new Pirate Emporium cosmetics in full detail that are releasing today for the July Sea of Thieves update. So let me know in the comments below if you like this type of video because maybe we'll start doing it each month since now I'll be able to show you all these cosmetics without breaking the bank. So this month's Pirate Emporium set revolves around the Bosun Brewmaster set. So one thing that I'm really happy with this month's set is that we have this new unique costume. This isn't just different clothing pieces. We have a costume that's specific for this set, which is one thing that I really like about this is, since it's a costume, you can just quickly put it on. You don't have to deal with, the lack of having clothing presets in the game. So it's just something that's nice to put on. And I think it looks decent. I don't know if it's something that I would purchase just because I think there's better costumes that you can have, but I do think it's a decent looking one. And something that we also have with this is it has a built-in emote, so we can take a look at that. And I kind of feel like this shouldn't be a built-in emote. This would be a cool emote for anyone to have. There's nothing really about this costume that makes it specific like that this needed to be tied to the costume. However, I do really like that emote. I think it's pretty cool, and I like that it doesn't just end. I don't really like the most that just end on their own. I like that, they kind of have some kind of idle pose to stick around in. So that's pretty cool. And as you can see from the beginning of this video, we also got an emote pack that goes along with the set. So we have 4 emotes that are in this pack with the Toast the Crew. So you can see how that looks. Pretty nice one there. Pretty simple. And obviously it will use the tankard that you have. The tankard that I'm using right now is also new to this set in the Pirate Emporium. We have the shaker one. I actually like this one a lot. This one I think is really cool. Probably my favorite in the little pack that we have here. I don't know if it goes the best with this tankard because of just the lids that are there, but I think it could go well with a lot of other tankards. Next up, as you saw earlier, we have the Raise the Grog one. I think it's interesting that he's lighting it on fire. It's a pretty cool one there. And it has a nice little idle animation there to go with it. And then let's do the final one, which I was playing at the beginning of the video, which is polishing the tankard. I think that all these are really nice. So next up, let's take a look at the ship set. So this ship set I'm doing on the galleon first to start off. This is all non-collector's items, so this is the non-collector's version of the figurehead and the non-collector's version of the sail. I think the figurehead here looks pretty decent. Obviously the, collector's version versus non-collector's version, I've always had an issue with. I never really liked the distinction in the game. Honestly, this could have been something that's on the outpost shops, this figurehead specifically, but I'm really excited to take a look at the collector's version since I haven't seen that one yet. The hull, as you can see, I actually really like the hull. It's kind of simplistic, but I really like those little white pieces of foam right there to kind of make it look like a frothing glass, and like the hull itself is like the mug that you're holding. I think that's pretty cool. It's a nice little detail, and I think it goes well with the theme. If we back up here, you can see the regular version of the sails on the galleon here, and then later I'll show the collector's version on the sloop, just so you can get a little contrast of both of them. I think the sails look pretty decent, but is it worth the premium price tag? I'm not sure. You can also see up there the flag, which I think the flag looks okay, but if you're asking me, I never would spend money on a Pirate Emporium flag. You're barely ever going to notice it when you're playing, and there's probably a decent equivalent that you can get inside of the outpost shops, so I wouldn't spend your money on that, but that's just my opinion. If we take a look at this, we have the wheel here. I think this wheel looks really nice. I really like the kegs there at the bottom there that you can kind of see are kind of filling up this like tube, which is kind of cool. It has a pretty unique design, and I really like this little gauge in the middle that it has like a little bit of an animation that's moving. It'd be nice if that was reactive to something in the game, like maybe if it was reactive to the direction you're pointing or something like that. But otherwise, I think it's pretty cool. If I twist it, you can kind of see how that looks. It's not, obscuring anything, which is nice. I've had some wheels in the game where they can obscure your view. So this one's nice. It's kind of simplistic in that sense. Next we have the cannon here, which I think is okay, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at it. It has that little nice animation with the gauge right there, which is kind of nice. I'm not sure if I like the paint style on this one as much, this kind of, orangey look. I know it's kind of, on the hole and everything, I like the hole. It's not really working for me here that much, but I do like these little levers on the side. I think that's a nice little touch. It gives this cannon a little bit more personality, I think. If we look at the cannon itself, I think this middle piece right here, where it kind of bumps up, I think could be slightly distracting when trying to aim. I don't really like that much. You could technically use this little orange piece here as a sight, so that might be somewhat useful, but I think the big bulb on the side here could also be distracting. So I don't think this is going to be great for combat. But if we shoot something off with this, this is what the cannon flare looks like. And I think this cannon flare looks really nice. I think it lasts a little bit too long. I think it will be a little bit difficult to see sometimes, but I love where you can see like these little popping bubble animations at the end. I think that's a nice touch with this. Moving on, let's take a look at the capstan here. So we have this capstan, and if we start lifting it, you have the frothing cup in the middle, which is pretty nice. I don't know if I think this capstan was the best. I would have liked to have something that's a little bit animated. It would have been nice to have like the frothing cup with like actual animation, like liquid moving around, like with a foam moving or something, especially as you lifted this up. Or have like the middle part of this capstan be filled with like liquid, where it's like kind of a frothing cup, and maybe make the whole capstan look like it's like a giant frothing keg or cup or something. There's more that they could have done with this, but what we have here I think is okay. One detail I really do like about this is if you look at the handles here, they're actually little taps. So, the idea is that you'd put your cup under it and you could fill up your glass. So I think that's a really nice touch. That's honestly brings it up a whole lot in my mind. So I really like that. I think that's a nice detail. Alright, so next we're going to head to the sloop so we can look at the collector's version of the stuff for the ship set, as well as look at the new weapons that were added for this set, and a new pet that was added in this month's update. Alright, so here we are with the sloop, and we have the collector's version of the sail and the figurehead here, as well as you can see right in the corner here, I have the new Ashen Toucan, which, we'll talk about the Ashen Toucan real quick. I think it's fine, it kind of fits in with the other Ashen Curse pets. If you're going to get one of these Ashen Curse pets, this one's not my favorite. I think my favorite is the Ashen Curse Owl that we got a couple months ago, or maybe like a year ago or so. That one I've used a lot. I really like that one. But if you are a Toucan fan, then this is a cool one to have. Has a very cool vibe to it. So something to keep an eye out for that. But let's take a look at this figurehead and this sail. So starting with the figurehead, I'm a bit disappointed because there was a really good opportunity to have like a frothing cup of frog or whatever it is that they're trying to say that this is. And it would have been really nice to have something that was a little bit more animated. Just have like a frothing glass, similar to, I believe we had the ship set that's for the Conqueror's Bad Fur Day, the one that's based off that game. It has a frothing cup figurehead with the squirrel. If you want a figurehead that goes a lot better with this ship set, I would honestly recommend getting that. For those interested, this is what that figurehead looks like. I think it goes a lot better with this set if you are asking for my opinion, which if you're watching this video, I'd assume you're interested in what my opinion is on this. But I think just the animated frothing glass right there really looks a lot better. And I think this just blends in better with the ship set. The squirrel, I think, looks a lot better. The kind of industrial look of the other figurehead, where it's just kind of hanging off, kind of goofy looking, I just don't think looked that well. But then we also have the sail here, which honestly, I can't really tell the difference between this sail and the regular version of the sail. So if you're asking my opinion on these two, I would just save your money. There's better alternatives that you can get, so if you like some of the other aspects of the ship set, maybe like the capstan or the cannons or something like that, or even just the hull, I would recommend maybe going with something from the Build Rat set in the Outpost shops if you want to save a little bit of money, and skip buying the sails from here. And if you want something that's a little bit more animated, a little bit more worth the money for the figurehead, I would recommend taking a look at that Conqueror's Bad Fur Day figurehead that's kind of old at this point. We also have a ship crest with this set. I think this crest looks really nice. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more animation for like the cups here, the tankards, but I do really like this little like, glowing thing that's right here. I guess that's just kind of like the grog itself, or the drink that they have brewed. That's kind of foaming in there, as well as you have the little gauge that's still here. All of those are really nice details. I think this ship crest looks really good. Now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at our final category, which is the new weapons for this set. So we have the new pistol here, which I'm going to give a little bit better of a look right here. So you can see how that looks. It kind of has a similar vibe with like the little tap on it and that kind of stuff. I don't know if you really needed the tap and the trigger there. I think you could have used the tap in place of that. But you might like that look, having both of them there. If we were to aim with it, you can see how it looks here. I really like the little animation on this, where you can see the little gauge going off, just like how some of the other pieces of this set act. I think that's really cool. It might be a little distracting when you're playing, if you're playing competitive, but I think overall, you have the little sight at the end of this pistol, which I think helps a lot. And I think you should be good. So if we aim over there, yeah, that shoots pretty straight right there. So if we do another one. Yeah, I really like this one. I think this is a good pistol right here. Something I'm not as fond of, but I do think looks pretty unique, is the Cutless for this set. So this Cutless has like this weird pipe looking thing that kind of is all bent out, and then you have like the keg handle that's out as well. It almost makes like a R shape right there. You can kind of see that. And, if you look at it this way, it doesn't look too bad, but holding it, it just kind of feels weird to me, having like that weird bump up there, and then you can kind of hold it up. Holding it up like this looks perfectly fine. I think that actually looks good, but something about like walking around with this, it just kind of feels a little weird to me. A little bit goofy, but obviously this is about appearance. Doesn't really have a gameplay impact for it looking like that. So if you like the design of this, I think go for it. Next up, we have the blunderbuss, and this is a pretty cool looking blunderbuss. I don't typically like when it gets kind of more of the flared end or kind of like a bigger end there, so it's not like a clear sight with it. But if you're okay with that, I think this is a very unique looking one. I really like kind of like the twisty pipe at the bottom there. I think that looks pretty cool. And if we go ahead and take a look at actually holding it and what it looked like if you're playing with it. Yeah, the whole like kind of bump in the middle there feels a little bit too bulky for me. It feels just a little bit, I don't know, claustrophobic is kind of the feeling I get, kind of how much space it takes up on the screen. It's not too much of a difference as opposed to like other types of blunderbusses, but I don't think I'd ever change from my normal blunderbuss to this. But go ahead and shoot that off there. You can see what it looks like reloading. I think it's fine. I think the design on the outside looks better, but actually using it to play with, I don't really like as much. Next up, we have the Eye of Reach for this set. And this Eye of Reach, I think also looks pretty cool, similar to the blunderbuss, has a really unique design. I really love the tube that's kind of going around the scope right there. I think that looks really cool. And then if we look at the end of this, I mean, it has kind of that same kind of flared up end at there, but it shouldn't really matter for an Eye of Reach, as opposed to like other guns that you'd be using. So let's take a look at how it looks when actually using. So just carrying it around, I think it looks pretty nice. I think overall it's not obtrusive. I think that little like kind of bump at the end there, if it were going the other direction, if it were going upward, that would be aggravating. But since it's going downward, I don't really notice it too much. It's not as bothersome. And then for aim with the scope, it doesn't have like any unique scope with it, which is kind of disappointing. I think maybe more competitive players that are using the Eye of Reach would probably be annoyed by that. But I like some of the Eye of Reaches that have like tinted glass or other stuff that makes it a little bit more unique, help it stand out a little bit more. So if we were to go over here, we can try to aim with it. And you can see it's pretty good there. And you can see how it reloads. And overall, I think it's a pretty nice looking Eye of Reach there. Next up, we have the double barrel pistol for this set. I think this one looks pretty good. I don't really use the double barrel pistol too often, so, even though it looks nice, I probably wouldn't get it for myself. But if we're looking at the actual design of it, I do really like that they really utilize the two different barrels instead of just making them, both look the same. They both have like a little bit of a different look to each of them. Whether or not you like that look is another question, but I do kind of like how you can see like the levers that are used to represent like kind of the keg taps. They are like in different positions, which is kind of cool. I don't know if it changes based off of, yeah, it does change. So based off of how it's loaded. That's a really nice touch there. So if I shoot both of those off, you can see how that looks. And then let's say if we were to shoot one off, you can see the other one. Now this actually might be a little bit more useful when actually playing because it makes it a little bit more obvious which bullet you're on. Now I've never had a problem tracking which bullet that I'm using, but if you have trouble with that, this actually might be a good strategy to use because having kind of both the little keg tap there and the normal little lever kind of makes it a little bit more obvious of which bullet you're on. It has also a little gauge on there that's kind of cool to look, and you have a sight in the middle. The one thing is, kind of the different design on each barrel makes it a little bit bumpy on either side, which I think can be a little bit distracting when you're trying to aim. So I prefer having like the flintlock, but if you're used to the double barrel pistol, you can let me know in the comments below whether or not you think this would be too distracting to use. Moving on, we have one of my favorite weapons, which is the throwing knives. And I gotta say, I really like this throwing knife, even though I'd say it's a little bit more basic for this set than I would have liked. I would have liked to see something a little bit more interesting for this set, but if we take a look at the throwing knife here, it looked good. I think it would have been a great outpost throwing knife, but for a premium Pirate Emporium set, I think they could have done a bit better. I do really like just kind of the little detail of having the hole in the middle, so it kind of forms like a little ring. And it kind of feels like a little bit of a shorter dagger. I think having that little open space where the ring is helps with that. So it makes it feel like almost like a tiny knife compared to the other throwing knives. So if I pick it up, I throw it, you can see what it looks like throwing them. I also show what it looks like sticking into the wall there. So pretty cool looking there. I really like it. Finally, we have our last two weapons to go over for this set. First with the blowpipe here. And I think this blowpipe is pretty okay. Wouldn't say I love it or my favorite from this weapon set, but it's okay. I think it's going to have the same problem in terms of the sight line as we have with some of the other weapons, but we can go ahead and take a look at that. This is what it looks like just holding it in your hand. And it actually doesn't have the problem with the sight line as the other ones. It actually looks pretty good here. I'll shoot against the wall. I do really like the sight that's on this. I think the sight on it actually makes it really good for aiming. So this is actually a pretty good one. I wouldn't say the design is my favorite. I probably would go with something that I like the design a little bit better. But if you use the blowpipe and you want something that has like a little sight on it, this is pretty good to use for aiming. Finally now we have the grapple gun. So the grapple gun for this one, I think is okay. I think it's pretty similar to the sniper, but I think on this side of it, you see a little bit better details. So you see like the little animated gauge, you see the little keg lever right there. And I feel like they could have done a little bit better. It would have been cool to have like, like a foaming mug or something that is where like the barrel is. That would have been maybe a little bit more interesting than what we got here. But in terms of actually using it, this is what it looks like kind of holding around, carrying it. If we shoot up to here, let's see what it looks like reloading. And overall, I think it's good. I think I like having a little bit more of the details on the side that you can see where you're holding it, as opposed to just using an emote. You kind of get a little bit better of a view from here, where you see the gauge and all that stuff. But overall, I feel like they could have done a little bit better with this design. I think it's not bad, but it's not anything, to write home about. So with that, that covers all the new Pirate Emporium cosmetics for the July monthly update for Sea of Thieves. If you like this type of video, let me know in the comments below. Maybe we can keep doing it each month. Since we are able to show footage from insiders now, it's not like a financial burden to try to show off all these cosmetics. So I don't mind making these types of videos. I think it's kind of fun to give my thoughts on this and to also hear what y'all think about these cosmetics. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you like and subscribed. And until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye, y'all.